On this episode of The Quad on JNS, we'll be joined by our panelists again, and we'll be discussing the most recent revelations about how Hamas asked the IRGC for $500 million. Beyond that, we'll also be discussing Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to Washington to discuss the most recent tariffs being implemented, as well as a potential strike on the Iranian nuclear sites. And finally, we'll be discussing the protest movement, both against Hamas inside of the Gaza Strip and, of course, in favor of Hamas on American campuses. Disturbing scenes that we're seeing there for sure. And, of course, as always, our scumbags and heroes, the most beloved segment on The Quad. Be sure to tune in today to The Quad on JNS. Welcome back to The Quad on JNS. I'm Emily Schrader, your host, filling in for our beloved Fleur this week. So first, I want to introduce our panel today. We have Shoshanna Keats-Jaskoll, the writer and feminist co-founder of Ruchmat Nashim. We also, of course, have our actor and comedian extraordinaire, as well as a hot single Jewish lady, currently in Israel, but unfortunately will not be with us for this foreseeable future. Her last episode for a while, Barbie Heller. Very sad, we'll be missing you. And then, of course, we also have Daniel-Ryan Spaulding, the comedian and writer, activist, everything else in the book. Also happy to have you with us. We probably won't see you also for a couple of weeks. Really sad day here at the Quad, but today we have a lot on the agenda to discuss. First things first, Iran. There's new documents that were released that were showing that Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif, the leaders of Hamas, the now deceased leaders of Hamas, requested $500 million in June 2021 from the IRGC in a letter that was released from the Shin Bet here in Israel that detailed exactly what they were asking for from the Islamic Republic of Iran. And then, of course, this is all coming out at the same time that we see the IRGC shipping weapons to Sudan, trying to open a new front on this war that we've already cut down quite a few of their proxies, but apparently not enough just yet. So, Barb, let's start with you. What's your take on this whole situation?
I am really sick of people not listening. I just saw, unfortunately, Dave Smith again on Joe Rogan, who is now playing this new card like, well, you know, we just didn't make peace with Hamas next. You know, as long as if we had just made peace with the Palestinians, then we totally would not be in this situation.
And the whole thing is basically the clean break is a break from the peace process, a break from Oslo, because essentially Bill Clinton had gotten Yitzhak Rabin and Arafat to agree to start this two-state solution process that should be loosely based around 67 borders. You got to finally give these Palestinians a state. You've been occupying them since 1967. You got to finally take your boot off their neck. And the clean break strategy was to go, listen, we got to get away from this whole idea of a Palestinian state and giving them land. And basically the thinking, the Yitzhak Rabin old school thinking on this, loosely speaking, it's a little more complicated, but basically they were like, look, we've been occupying the Palestinians for decades and decades now. The broader Arab world hates us over our treatment of the Palestinians. And so what you got to do is you have to make peace with the Palestinians so that you can get along with all these Arab states around you. That was kind of the thinking. And the clean break strategy was like, no. We're going to reverse that. Instead of making peace with the Palestinians so that we get along with the Arab states surrounding us, what we're going to do is we're going to overthrow all of those states. So we never have to make peace with the Palestinians.
Dave, I don't think that you've been to Israel, because if you had, you'd see that it's really nearly impossible. We tried for 20 years to make peace with these people. And as you just clearly stated, there's been plans. Did you ever read the Hamas charter? Have you guys been paying attention at all? This has been in the works for years, for decades. And the fact that we have Jews just going out there and making people more anti-Semitic. But I have to say one thing. I was so grateful to see Gad Saad talk about this on his own show. He had never really heard of Dave Smith for some reason, even though they've both been on Joe Rogan multiple times. I think Gad Saad's actually been on 11 times. I think Dave has been on a little less. And he said something like, you know, Sam Harris is now so upset because Dave Smith is this Jew and saying all these dangerous things about Israel. And what he said, which I loved, was, and I love this about our people, why can't we have differences of opinion? And why is it so dangerous? You know, the one thing I really hardly ever see are people from the Palestinian territories, are people all over the 57 Arab countries having differences of opinion. So God bless you, Dave Smith. I'm still waiting for you to come to Israel so we can get things right and move things along.
Well, I think you're alone in that one. I don't think anybody else here in Israel wants him to come. But I appreciate your effort to be nice. In response to all of this story about what's happening on the ground in Iran, we did see that Israel's foreign minister did release a statement about what's happening. As you mentioned, it's been going on for years. This isn't a new thing that we see Hamas trying to eradicate the state of Israel, as was written in this letter. Let's see what Katz had to say about this.
אני מציג כאן היום, לראשונה, מסמך תלכיד שיחות שנמצא במנהרות בכירי חמאס בעזה, שמוכיח קשר ישיר בין איראן לבין יחיא סנוואר ומוחמד דף במסגרת תמיכת איראן בתוכנית החמאס להשמדת ישראל. במסמך הם דורשים ממפקד כוח קודס של משמרות המהפכה האיראניות להעביר $500 מיליון לטובת השמדת מדינת ישראל. ראש ענף פלסטינים במשמרות המהפכה, איזדי, נענה לבקשה ומשיב להם שאיראן למרות מצבה הכלכלי הקשה ומצוקת האוכלוסייה האיראנית תמשיך להזרים כספים לחמאס בגלל שהמאבק בישראל ובארצות הברית נמצא בעדיפות העליונה של המשטר האיראני.
All right, we saw there what the foreign minister of Israel said. What's your response to all of this news about what we really already knew, but now there's proof for?
Well, it's not surprising. Anyone who knows anything about the Middle East knows that the IRGC is an Islamist terrorist network. It's a U.S. designated terrorist network. They fund all the proxy regimes surrounding Israel, like Hezbollah and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and they have a genocidal intention, and they want to destroy Israel and the United States and the whole Western world. They're jihadists. And if there's one thing all of America should unite around is national security and our interests and our safety as citizens of the free world. And whatever you think about Jews, that's your business. I love Jews. We're happy here in Israel, but Israel is our ally and our partner in the Western world. And the Houthis and Hamas are not.
Yeah.
They want to kill us.
Yeah, I know. I think we saw some interesting clips this week, not just from Israel battling Hamas terrorists in Gaza. I think they said over 100 Hamas terrorists have been eliminated in just the recent weeks. But we also have this clip posted by none other than Donald Trump himself. Take a look. So you see here, I don't know if we have also the tweet of how Trump shared this in particular, but this footage does actually show the U.S. forces taking out approximately 70 to 80 Houthi terrorists in one shot in just a few seconds. Shoshanna, what's your take on all this news that's happening on the ground? The fronts of the United States battling the IRGC proxies, as well as the news we got about Iran and the funding.
I mean, again, nobody's surprised. I mean, if you're surprised, you have not been paying attention, because clearly the Islamic regime of Iran is what is behind all of the turmoil that's going on here with the jihadis. And it's frankly, if anyone's denying it at this point, I think it's just a lie. Meaning you have to know. And if you pretend that you don't know, you're just lying. It's so clear who is desiring to live in peace and who is desiring to take over the world. So seeing, Trump, on the one hand, it's very sad. Like, as Jews, we're always taught, you don't celebrate someone else's death. At the same time, we also are taught what's good and what's evil. And if you're taking out terrorists, that's a good thing. And I would like to address this concept of no, they were just civilians out for Eid. It's not true. There were no picnic tables set up. There's no mom with the kids with the pots. That's not what was going on there. They are the dancing terrorists. They are the Houthis. You should look them up. You should know who they are. And they are horrible, terribly evil things that none of us need in this world. And so when they're taken out, it is a good thing. And I have to say, it's sad and it's afraid, it's terrifying. I'm getting a little Purim vibes though, like paying for the death of the Jews is very Purim story. If you don't know who it is, Haman paid Ahasuerus for the right to kill the Jews, genocidal killing the Jews, Purim, and then we were like, that's not going to happen. And we rose up, thank God. And
we had Queen Esther.
Queen Esther, the queen, who saved us. But this is not new. This is millennial, this is just keeps happening. And we, as you said, Daniel, have to know what's going on. We have to look and see the players. We have to understand what's happening here. And our job is to be able to say right from wrong and to teach other people. Guys, you have to know what's going on. You have to know the players. You have to know the motivations of each if you're really going to understand what's happening.
Which is why you should buy my book, 10 Things Every Jew Should Know Before They Go to College. No, but seriously, I do talk about that. That's what made me think of it. But I just want to add something to the whole conversation about Iran, and that is that you mentioned how national security should be something left to right everyone agrees on. We don't want to die at the hands of jihadist terrorists. But at the same time, I think that there's been a real effort to subvert what the actual aims are of terrorist organizations. And I don't think that anybody is more knowledgeable or has experienced more firsthand of the oppression of these terror proxies of the Islamic Republic than disproportionately Arab Muslims in the Middle East.
For sure.
But beyond that, everyone else in the Middle East as well. I mean, the destabilization in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Lebanon, of course, even Jordan, Egypt, and now, of course, we see Sudan. It also happening with Sudan, which is the Abraham Accords country. And despite that, we see that the IRGC is shipping thousands of weapons and drones into that government to fuel their own civil war. Why? Because destabilization and a weak, fractured society is exactly what the Islamic Republic of Iran needs to build up a new proxy. And Israel has done a tremendous job in the past 17, 18 months cutting those proxies down when it comes to, Lebanon, when it comes to the fall of Assad in Syria, when it comes to shutting down the IRGC efforts to Hamas or Islamic Jihad or any of these terror proxy groups. And now we have the United States on board also pushing back against the Houthis in Yemen. But really, we're at the beginning. And that's my main takeaway from this whole news that was breaking this week. It's not a surprise. But the fact, especially with what's happening with Sudan, the fact that Iran is still continuing to try to fuel and fund these terror proxies when they don't even have electricity in Iran, okay? They don't have water or electricity because all of their resources are going to funding these terror proxies. And this is at the same time that the U.S. is unveiling massive sanctions on the Islamic regime in Iran, as well as some new bills, the Maximum Support Act, that hopefully I'll talk about that more in my Heroes of the Week. There are things in motion to pressure this regime, despite the fact the Trump administration has been open to direct talks. The Islamic Republic hasn't taken the bait on that issue, and I think that will be ultimately to their own peril, which is great for the entire world. But summing up the conversation on Iran, we need to shift to Netanyahu, who now is currently in Washington meeting with the U.S. president on what we're told is two different topics. Of course, we have the issue of Iran. Will there be a strike? Won't there be a strike? If so, when? And what's it going to look like? And we also have the issue of tariffs. I don't know if anyone wants to take on tariffs when it comes to the state of Israel, but there's been an increase in tensions between the two countries on this issue as well. So, what's your take on Netanyahu in Washington this week?
Gosh, my take on Netanyahu in Washington, look, it's only good for us when we have good relations with the United States of America. That's something that we can say it's good for us. In terms of tariffs, I do hope that Bibi and Trump are able to work this out and in a way that works for both countries. I think both countries deserve economic stability. They deserve to have trade, and they deserve to have their own economy, their GDP, their own, at-home economy functional and good for the worker. I think all of those things can happen. I'm not an economist, so don't ask me how, but I do think if you have good relations and you have good intentions, hopefully something like that can be worked out well.
Well, there's also been some discussion that maybe Trump is positioning himself with it, he's not actually going to implement the tariffs at that extreme of a level, but he wants to sort of reposition the U.S. because so much of the manufacturing and everything that's been going on is done outside of the U.S. Now, personally, I am all for free trade. I completely oppose, for the records, tariffs on any of these countries. I'm against it. However, I do understand, I think, where he's coming from as a negotiator, and this is sort of how he's been on a lot of different issues, whether you love it or hate it. I know I personally don't agree with all of it. What's your take?
I'm still learning about it. So I don't want to be someone who expresses an opinion without fully educating myself on it. I'm learning about it.
You mean you don't want to be an anti-Israel protester?
No, I don't.
Wow.
I don't want to be part of an intifada revolution. So I'm still learning about it. But, it seems to be his strategy is to ask for a lot and then settle for something moderate and reasonable. And also, I think he wants to sort of let the world know, I'm in charge. He wants to sort of really make that clear that he's the leader of the free world, and he kind of bullies people a little, and maybe that's what the world needs right now. I think people really want a strong leader, and people want patriotism for the West, and so I'm willing to be patient and see how it unfolds. I think that people are very hysterical and reactive, and the news is making people very anxious. I'm just sort of letting things play out. Let's see what happens.
That is definitely true. I mean, there's a lot of hysteria in the media about, it's like everything the man does, it's the end of the world. And then it turns out, oh, actually, it's not.
Right.
Barb,
we keep hearing this word chaos. It's like, there's so much chaos going on. I'm like, actually, even though I haven't been in America since Trump took office, I feel just watching basic things like from my friends' Instagrams and listening to my friends and stuff, it's so much calmer. It's so, I mean, you were there.
Well, I think they're the ones creating the chaos.
Exactly. I think that it's very hard when you feel so passionately against someone, so much so that you hate Trump more than you want peace in the Middle East, peace in America, people to go to sleep at night, not having to worry about certain things. You hate him so much. It's like this idol worship, this Trump derangement syndrome. And it's like they're so worried about that they hate being wrong. So then they have to double down and, and this whole AOC craze and Bernie Sanders, like, the corruption is so deep, and I think what Elon Musk is doing with the Doge Group is so beautiful because someone's finally looking under the hood and taking a look at what's actually happening. And we see that $40 million a week was going to the Taliban, and we see you can't argue with some of these things. You have to say, okay, clearly something was wrong. Someone was asleep at the wheel. So please, guys, stop throwing up on Teslas and farting on them. Like, let's move on. Sometimes it's okay to be wrong and have real conscientious debate about what's good and what's bad. And it's not perfect, and Doge isn't perfect, but they're doing a heck of a lot right. And I think that if you're going to play with America, you have to pay sometimes. And we've had very limited. If you look at the history of our tariffs, they're actually very low concerning compared to everyone else. So I think it's time to raise a little bit, and it's okay to get people shaking in their boots.
They're reciprocal tariffs, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I know we discussed a little bit about the tariffs, but I also want to get to Netanyahu and what we expect to see when it comes to Iran. Daniel's excited. Do you think that there's going to be a strike? Do you think that there'll be action in the coming weeks?
I hope that we see the Iranian people do what they do best, which is bond together and stand up for, to be even stronger. It's like, I kind of want to go back to the days of Purim, like you mentioned before, Shoshanna, and, take a page out of the Jewish Persian groups, which were like, we bonded together, and God favors the brave. And I think that, history is on your side, and it's just when I listen to you and how you report about Iranians, and I'm so impressed with the Iranian people, and I think that God's going to be on their side, and maybe that's limited thinking, but I really hope that they're able to stand up to what's going on, and there is a coup, and I hope that we're able to figure this out because it's very sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bibi in Washington right now is really important for the issue of Iran. I think that if we don't see the Islamic Republic come in for some kind of negotiations, which I don't think is going to happen, I do think there will be a strike. But I also think it's important to note when it comes to the whole conversation surrounding Iran that this is going to be, I don't see a situation in which it's not going to be limited to the nuclear sites. And my hope is that it's done together with the United States because it will put a lot of pressure on Israel to do it by themselves. We can do it, but it's going to be really tough and much more risky. And I think that if you're going to move forward with something like this, it needs to be concrete. It needs to be eliminated in full. It needs to have the full amount of force to eliminate this nuclear program, or more people are going to die. The conflict is going to go on and on and on, and we don't want that.
I mean, I frankly don't know what we're waiting for, to be honest. Like, what more proof do we need? What else are we looking to find out? Like, what else do we need to understand that Iran is the bad guy, and therefore we must do something about it? And when I say we, I mean the West. I think that everyone who does not want more jihad, who doesn't want more terror, who doesn't want more campus protests and chaos. Protests are fine, but chaos is not okay. Should be saying, if Iran does not say right now, I'm not doing this anymore, we are giving up our jihadi whatever, then they need to be taken out. Like, I don't understand what we're waiting for, to be honest. Like,
But would you?
I just don't get it.
Would you believe them anyway? I mean,
listen,
come on.
They're not even saying it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not even saying it.
They're not lying.
So but they're funding, hundreds of millions of dollars, like you said, to kill our people when their people don't even have the basics. What else do we need to know?
Yeah.
Why they're sowing conflict and they're funding conflict all around the world. And I want to say something that is never really discussed, because I understand, but women and children are the ones who suffer under this the most. The terror is run by men. It is produced by men. It is, 99.99% male run, and the women are suffering, the children are suffering. There's no future but destruction. And so what the hell are we waiting for? Why do we not defend the weak? I think this is what really drives me crazy. It's like everyone talks about this political and culture. What culture? What culture?
I think Iranians will be the first people to tell you that isn't their culture. They were colonized by Islamists. This is where it came from, within the nation of Iran. And that's why there's so much animosity and hatred towards the Islamic Republic, who has forced this very radical interpretation of Shia Islam onto the country. And they've actively erased so much, thousands of years of beautiful, diverse history in the nation of Iran. It's incredibly disheartening to see. I do think it's also important to note, though, that even if we do see a strike from the United States and Israel together, that is not what's going to liberate Iran. I mean, it has to come from the people. This isn't going to be something foreign. That's their window, okay? That's their opportunity to rise up, and I know it's going to be costly for them. I don't envy them at all in this position, but they've got to do it. And we've finally seen a little bit more activity in Gaza as well in recent weeks. We saw some of the Gazans rising up and protesting in the north and south against Hamas. Of course, some of these protesters have already been executed, but we do have some footage from the recent days of what's been happening on the ground from the Gazans against Hamas. Let's take a look. Okay, so we have footage of this that's happening at the same time. And then I just want to show, before we discuss, I want to show one more clip that I think is really important to contrast. And that is what's happening in Washington, D.C. this week with the anti-Israel protests.
Capitalism that enslaves us, that lynches us, that bombs our babies.
Okay, so we can see the stark contrast here. We have Palestinians inside of Gaza saying Hamas are terrorists, and then we have Americans and some foreigners as well in the mix claiming that Israel are terrorists and actually defending Hamas and their supporters on U.S. campuses and in U.S. communities. Now, I was actually in Washington last week, and so I saw a lot of this happening on the ground, and it's insane. It is insane that there are people who are defending jihadism on American campuses. At the same time, Palestinians in Gaza are saying, please get rid of Hamas. I mean,
getting killed.
Of course, and getting killed for getting
people they're
tortured
defending.
and killed. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Shoshanna, what's your response to all of this?
I think it's just tragic. It's just tragic. I can't think of anything other than tragedy. It's just tragic, not only for the people who do want to live outside of Hamas, and there are people who do want to live outside of Hamas in Gaza, as we can clearly see, but also that in the West, that if you can't identify what is coming for you, what is rodef acharecha, sorry, that's the Hebrew phrase for someone who's chasing after you to kill you. If you can't identify that, you're not going to survive. And that just, you yourself, your children, your culture, your generations. And that's what I see happening. There's such an upside downness of understanding what's going on in the world. Daniel talks about this all the time. So clearly, that to me is just what I see every time I see what you're, this contrast between Gaza and Washington and elsewhere.
Daniel, I mean, what is the West missing? Why do we see hundreds, thousands of people, especially students, protesting in the streets? Do they actually believe this? Are they really that unaware of what's happening on the ground?
Well, I could talk about this for a very long time. It's a complete inversion of reality. It's this very decades-long weakening of society, a hatred of America, a hatred of men, a hatred of the whole system of how our society, Western society, is structured.
Well, I mean, I also hate men.
Oh, well.
Duh.
I hate some men. But even when I hate them, I still kind of want them.
Isn't it the worst?
Yeah. But
Welcome to our world.
What you were saying about how women suffer the most at the hands of these jihadists, one of the most brilliant things that they came up with was using the frame of women to push jihad. So you have the Muslim Brotherhood like Linda Sarsour, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and how the feminization of the scarves and the doves and the olive trees and the idea of reclaiming this land, this mystical idea of Palestine is this sort of softening of and again, like, we've created such a weakened society, a society that hates white people, that hates men, that hates the West, and the Jew is the West. And so instead of identifying with the Gazan people who wish to be free of Hamas, instead of identifying with the Iranian people who wish to be free of the IRGC, and the women who are saying, we want our freedom, they are identifying with the women who are going with the jihad. They're the saviors, these white saviors are actually the oppressors. They're identifying with the oppressors instead of with the oppressed.
It's crazy.
Well, you know what's particularly true about that? You know Masih Alinejad? She's an Iranian feminist activist. So a lot of the feminist leaders in the Western world criticized her for running a whole campaign against hijab for Iranian women, which of course is mandatory, and you go to prison and get lashes if you remove hijab at best. And this is something she's spoken out about a lot. And then you see in response that there are people who are criticizing her and saying she's Islamophobic for her choice in America to remove hijab. I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's insanity. They'll even go after women who are advocating for other women.
Sorry. When I was living in New York, I lived just 5 blocks from NYU, and you would see like these young girls wearing a keffiyeh, sort of like this. They would have like, you know, their midriff showing, but they'd have a keffiyeh on, like this sort of sexy, sensual thing. And it's like the idea is like
it's fetishizing.
It's almost this fetishization of terror and this fetishization of oppression because they're so privileged. It's like they're struggling to find oppression.
And they can take it off whenever they want.
And
they're sort of cosplaying as if they're women in Iran when the Iranian women are risking their lives fighting against having to wear it. It's disgusting. It's perverse.
We also saw exactly what you're describing on campus, at some of these encampments. I remember that there was a video where they had all the anti-Israel protesters, I really should say pro-Hamas protesters on campus, do Islamic prayers in the middle of campus. That too. And you saw like a white American student wearing like a hijab with like a shirt up to here. Like clearly she doesn't know what she's doing.
And the best is when they're LGBTQ and
of course the Queers for Palestine. And Daniel's favorite.
Yeah, and you're getting what you want. We have this huge center in Texas right now that's under scrutiny. Thank God, finally we have laws in America that actually are against it, unlike in Europe where they just look the other way and people get raped and gang raped. But in America, right now we have Muslim Brotherhood centers all over New York. You have them in Texas. You have a whole city right now where they're doing improper burials. They're they're finally going under the wire to finally see what's going on. And we have imams all over America. And I keep, for some reason, it's in my feed, so I keep seeing exactly what they're saying. Listen when they say things like, the West is the death of society, secularism is the opposite of Islam, and Islam is the only way, and we're going to take over. They're literally saying this in America. I saw Mohammed Kazwini, an imam from Michigan, USA.
She has no medical excuse, no psychological excuse, no whatsoever excuse. She has no right not to make herself available within appropriate limits and means. If you want to solve this situation, start with step number 1. You have the best attitude, use nice words, and try to make her happy. See what's bothering her. Let's say you tried step number 1. You really did. You went out of your way to try to please her and fix the situation. She's still stubborn. She's ignoring you. She doesn't care. She's being negligent. She's not making herself available. What's step number 2? وَاهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. The next step is now you start applying pressure on her. Let her know that her attitude is not welcome. If that doesn't work, then the Quran says, وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. If that doesn't work, as a last resort, hit them.
Teaching people that a wife has no right to refuse her husband intimacy. Are you listening, feminists on the NYU campus? Are you listening in Columbia? Do you hear that this is your future? This is what you are being proponents of. So just please pay attention. I would just love to. And this is, again, it goes back to ideology. You know, you mentioned before, if we could just look at history, this is nothing new. Look at religious history. Start studying religious history. I know that the Islamic one is probably the youngest. It looks like the oldest because it looks so foreign and old and archaic. But we had Judaism for 3,500 years. And
what do you mean? Moses was a Muslim.
Yeah, blessings
Moses,
be upon him.
Jesus, everything.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we had Christianity for about 1,500 years, and then 750 years after that we had Islam. But please try to do a little bit more of your research besides these secular books that you're reading by non-Jewish, non-Muslim people who seem to know everything about governments. It's not about the governments. Look at the religious history.
And beyond religion, if you want to support Palestinians, don't join the anti-Israel movement, because that is clearly, as we've discussed, not pro-Palestinian. It's not even pro-Muslim.
No.
It's anti all of these things that they claim they hate. So stop supporting these people and be the voice of those who actually need your support, like the people who are currently being persecuted by Hamas for standing up to them, and of course, the Iranian people. And with that, we're going to move to our favorite section of the Quad, which is the Scumbags and Heroes. So let's get started. Daniel, for the Scumbag of the Week. Daniel, what do you have for us?
Hey, New York City. Do you wonder why your children can't read, don't know what gender they are, and are obsessed with killing Jews? Look no further than Cynthia Nixon's wife, Christine Marioni. See, behind every great evil lesbian, there's an even greater evil lesbian. Christine founded the Alliance for Quality Education, and I highly encourage all the Jewish moms following me to do a deep dive on this organization and what sort of curriculum they've introduced into New York public schools. As one of the first posts tagged on their Instagram page is, "We demand a permanent ceasefire and an arms embargo," with an olive tree and a dove, because, you know, Hamas is all about birds and nature. Children need to learn how to read and write and do math, not be indoctrinated to hate America and destroy the state of Israel and Western civilization. Now it's starting to make sense why Cynthia is so passionate about keeping Mahmoud Khalil in the country and feels so passionately about underage children getting irreversible sex change operations, and why she dreams about a world where Palestine can be free of the collective Jew. They're lunatics. And I encourage parents to look into this organization, Alliance for Quality Education. All eyes on Christine Marioni. These lesbians, they're trying to kill us.
Barb, who do you have for us?
Oh, well, I would like to call out Code Pink. Anyone who's supporting Code Pink, I don't know the names of these three ladies that seem to always be at the front of it, but I love for Code Pink and Ben and Jerry and all these people who think that they're fighting for women's rights and human rights to just notice who you have so much in common with. Senator Josh Hawley, thank you. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you. Tom Cotton, Kash Patel, for finally doing the deep dive inside of this organization and noticing that, some of your funding is coming from the Communist Party in China. And it seems like you guys have a lot in common with Russia, Iran, Qatar, Hamas, the Houthis, SJP, Muslim Brotherhood. Why don't you guys all just get together, hang out, maybe fly to Israel? We'll take care of you. We'll put you up in a nice hotel. You'll see what it's like to really have human rights. And
Barb will host you for Shabbat.
I'll host you for Shabbat. But I want you to start listening to each other, because you think, Code Pink, that you're actually standing up for women's rights, and you're really actually throwing every woman's right into the crapper. And it's really not a good look. So you are officially my scumbags of the week.
Can't disagree with that. And you wore the right color today as well.
I know. Well, because I'm trying to subliminally get to you what pink really is supposed to mean.
Exactly. So my scumbag this week is the 2 MPs from the UK who were denied entry, along with all of the media and elected officials who claimed that this was some sort of gross violation of their most basic civil rights. They are MPs Mohammed and who's the second one? MP Yang. So these are 2 anti-Israel, explicitly anti-Israel and aggressively anti-Israel MPs from the UK, members of the Labour Party, who were here not on a formal parliamentary delegation, but they came here for, well, really, we don't actually know the full answer, but upon being questioned, upon their arrival in Israel, it was determined that they were not here on any kind of official mission, and that they were at least tentatively planning on engaging in some sort of counter IDF or counter Israel activity well on the ground here in Israel, and for that reason they were denied entry. Of course, this is something that Israel and every sovereign country has a right to do, but the part I find especially outrageous about this entire incident is not just the ridiculous media coverage, especially in the UK, acting like this is something unusual, but the stark hypocrisy from the UK government. I mean, you have the Foreign Minister, David Lammy, talking about how awful this is and how this is such a violation of all the norms of diplomacy. You even have people calling online to expel the Israeli ambassador to the UK in response to this incident, when at the same time in 2008, you had the UK denying entry to Moshe Feiglin from entering the United Kingdom. You also saw the UK denying entry to Geert Wilders from Holland in recent years. I believe it was 1 year after that incident with Moshe Feiglin. So the idea that any country doesn't have the sovereign right to do exactly what they did, regardless of whether or not an individual is a member of parliament or an elected official, it's absurd. And they know it's absurd, and they're being intellectually dishonest about it. And this is a disgusting thing to do, especially for an allied country, the United Kingdom, to the state of Israel, which is constantly under attack. No one has a right to enter a sovereign country. You are, when you enter another country, under or subject to the laws of that nation itself. And I also want to add one more thing specifically for David Lammy, which is that David Lammy, when he was in the opposition, or when the Conservative Party was in control of the UK, he himself said that the UK should deny entry to Donald Trump. At the time was former President Donald Trump. So he's in favor of banning the President of the United States from the United Kingdom. Good luck with that, by the way. But he's upset that Israel wants to prevent people who actively support terrorist organizations. And by that I mean they signed on to letters saying that the state of Israel should be eradicated or destroyed. So we're talking about 2 MPs who have actually supported in one way or another the destruction of the state of Israel, and yet expect to be admitted entry. So this is ridiculous. You're all hypocrites, and you're my scumbags of the week.
Whew.
Yes. And now, Shoshanna, who's your scumbag this week?
Oh my gosh. My scumbag this week is, I'm sure, a repeat offender, the International Criminal Court, who requested from Hungary to arrest, detain, and send Netanyahu, who was visiting Hungary this week, to The Hague. I'm like, do you really think that Hungary then invited the Prime Minister to go, like, oh, by the way, psych, arrest him and bring him to The Hague because you said you wanted to arrest? No. First of all, no. Second of all, what? You are a joke. You've been a joke. You are a joke. You can continue to be a joke. And it's terrifying. You know, it is one thing to deny, it is one thing to deny other members of government to a country. It's another thing to arrest the sovereign elected, you don't have to like Bibi, but he was the elected prime minister of a Western democracy. And to say you're going to arrest them and bring them to The Hague is just lawlessness. It's lawlessness. It's not law, it's lawlessness. You, ICC, are my scumbag of the week, and I'm sure you'll be here again.
I also have to give a shout out, now that we're transitioning, I also have to give a shout out to Hungary for, essentially giving them the middle finger. But anyway, on to the heroes of the week. Let's start with you, Barb. Who's your hero this week?
Ooh, I'm so excited. So my hero of the week is Laura Burns, the former FBI agent and now head of terrorism research at GW, George Washington University, for calling out the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas ties.
Immediately when the Oslo Accords were signed, Hamas vowed to derail those accords. And on the day that ceremony was held and that peace agreement was signed, the leaders of the U.S.-based infrastructure, including the leaders of the so-called charitable organization and the media organization, got on the phone and decided they needed to have a meeting. And they planned the meeting, and it was held in Philadelphia in early October of 1993, where it was a 2-day meeting, and it was recorded, and ultimately it has been declassified and published at trial, so it's public record. They convened and determined how they would go about continuing to support Hamas in the United States, derail the peace accords, undermine the Palestinian Authority's self-rule, but do so and still survive here because they recognized that the U.S. government was going to designate them as a terrorist organization at some point.
I just love how you're calling it out so clearly, and the fact that you have your FBI training makes it all the more beneficial. Violence is the answer to your problems, allegedly Hamas has said, and this is so evident because we see that they're instilling within the Muslim Brotherhood and within their ideologies that are infiltrating into college campuses, and now, as Daniel mentioned, in New York, in these quality educational programs. What kind of quality is this? Where do you want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? Do you want more violence? Do you want more chaos on the street? Thank you for calling out that Israel did try to have a two-state solution with Hamas, with the leaders of the Palestinian territories, and it didn't work because Hamas never wanted a compromise. They put it in their charter. Did you ever read it? I know they sneakily took it out recently, but it was there for 20 years. Hamas created a charter to get rid of any of the Oslo Accords, the Muslim Brotherhood's creation, and its connections to Hamas and the CARE Act and AMP, and of course SJP. The derailment is happening according to their plans, and we need to wake up because we only have a few Western countries left. So you have to ask yourself, what do I want in 5 years? What do I want in 10 years? Thank you, Laura Burns. God bless you. You are my hero of the week.
All right, Shoshanna, I know you have a hero that's kind of connected to your scumbag, right? Let's hear it.
Yes. So my hero in the story is Hungary. Because not only did they not arrest Netanyahu, but they said, we out from the ICC. We're not going to do this, and we're going to leave the membership of the ICC because you have said that we should be arresting Netanyahu. And I just want to say the warrants of the ICC accuse the Israeli leader of directing attacks against civilian population in Gaza, using starvation as a method of warfare by hindering the supply of international aid, and so during this entire war. So it's not just like, let's come and see what's happening like they tried to do with the genocide, which, by the way, has been very quiet. But they actually accuse him of, on purpose, directly trying to kill civilians. And Hungary said, no, we don't agree with this, and we're not going to comply, which is a heroic thing to do, especially when you're on the world, international stage. So I really appreciate Hungary, you taking a stand, leaving the ICC, and refusing to be an accomplice in this witch hunt, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, everything with the ICC, it's a total perversion of international law, and everything good and just it was supposed to protect.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a total...
Like the UN.
Yeah, such a disappointment. As somebody who does a lot of work on human rights stuff, it's endlessly upsetting to watch this happen.
But the fact that Hungary had millions of Jews killed and probably the best minds of the Jewish world and the Hasidic masters of the Holocaust under their watch, and they've turned around, it goes to show you, people sometimes say, maybe I was wrong.
Well, every country that persecutes Jews pays for it in the end. I mean, look at the economy of Iraq, the economy of Egypt. I mean, when you persecute Jews, bad things happen. It's not us doing it, it's just the world. Don't persecute your Jews. So, Daniel, who's your hero?
Well, on that note, I would like my hero this week to be Pierre Poilievre. The federal election in Canada is coming. I'm a Canadian citizen. I was raised in Canada. I've never voted for the Conservative Party before. I've only voted Green or NDP, and I'm just letting all my fellow Canadians know, if you feel like you need to vote Conservative, do it. I will be voting for Pierre Poilievre because of his strong moral conviction against terrorism and against the IRGC. Take a look.
I think the idea of allowing a genocidal, theocratic, unstable dictatorship that is desperate to avoid being overthrown by its own people to develop nuclear weapons is about the most dangerous and irresponsible thing that the world could ever allow. And if Israel were to stop that genocidal, theocratic, unstable government from acquiring nuclear weapons, it would be a gift by the Jewish state to humanity.
This is the moral clarity we need as the leader of Canada. And we have to think about our children's future, our grandchildren's future, and what sort of society that they will live in, if they will have the same rights and freedoms that we do now. I get that we get caught up in little culture wars, but you need to think long-term about the safety and security of your country. So please vote for Pierre Poilievre. Thank you.
Really, really important point that you just made. We have to think long term. People they get comfortable. This is what happens when you have a good life. You're comfortable. Your worst problem is paying taxes. And all of a sudden you don't have to think about, will I survive? Will my children survive? Will they have jobs? Will they have rights? But people have to start thinking like that because these are the things that are under attack in Western civilizations.
There's jihad in the streets of Toronto.
There's jihad in the streets.
If you want to trade your Jews for jihadists, that is up to you, but your society will fall apart.
And that's what's been happening in Canada. It's so upsetting to see. It was shocking when I was there, like the scenes in Toronto. Absolutely shocking. It's like not what I remember Canada being. Really, really scary scene. So hopefully the election results. I'm not Canadian, so I can't say, but we'll let Daniel take it away from.
Please vote Conservative.
Okay, and last but not least, my hero of the week, which is NUFDI. It's a think tank in Washington, D.C., along with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, another think tank in Washington, D.C. And the reason for that is I was in Washington this past week when the U.S. Congress put forward two different bills. The first one was the Maximum Pressure Act, and the second was the Maximum Support Act. Now, one of them targets the Iranian regime, the IRGC, and a lot of their sinister activities internationally, especially their oil, how they're evading sanctions going through China. So a number of different loopholes are being closed to crack down on the Islamic regime in Iran. But in addition to that, and this was the bill that NUFDI really pushed, is the Maximum Support Act, which is something that we haven't yet seen from really any Western government, but certainly not the United States as of yet when it comes to their Iran policy. And that is a set of actions that will support the Iranian people against the Islamic regime in Iran. And I don't mean by arming them, the same way people love to talk about like there's a conspiracy, but I do mean giving them actual resources, technological support in particular. We know one of the things that the regime does against their own people is, of course, shut off the internet. So this bill looks at finding solutions to some of those problems that are particularly impacting the people of Iran at the same time as you're cracking down on the regime in Iran. I think this is something that really, really needs to happen if we're going to see a better future for the people of Iran. And I'm so grateful and happy for the work of these two think tanks in Washington to put forward and to work with legislators in the U.S. Congress on something as important as this. So you are my heroes of the week. Thank you for that. And that pretty much sums it up for this week, at least. I mean, unfortunately, you won't be with us next week, so we're upset with you. But it's been a pleasure to have you on here on the Quad. And I know I speak also for Fleur, even though she's not here. She's traveling the world right now. But we hope that you join us again, Barb. Daniel, I know you're also taking a short break from us. Hopefully we'll see you back soon.
Yes, at the end of the month. And I'm doing my show in Jerusalem on April 23rd.
So everyone in Jerusalem should come.
Show up.
On my website.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to The Quad.